This is Norman Alderman. I'm talking today about the issue with Ferrel Kelly. Something is going wrong with the court system in his county. Ferrel was given a traffic ticket for peeing in the alley. The officer called it indecent exposure. Indecent exposure requires that one show that the activity involved was of a sexually gratifying nature. The only gratification Ferrel was getting out of that was taking a leak. Seemed like a simple thing. I imagine there's lots of people that have taken a leak in an alley somewhere or behind a tree. But the thing that's ironic about this is that, according to Ferrel, and it is his testimony, that he didn't pee in the alley. And he says that the officer actually asked him if he was peeing. Now, there's one thing about an arrest. Arrest without a warrant requires the officer to actually see what's going on. So why would the officer ask if he was peeing if he saw him peeing? The second thing with that is that when you give someone a traffic ticket, it is a summons to court. Now, you don't have to be arrested per se for that, but you will have to show up in court. Ferrel is very punctual with his court appearances. He honors the court's decisions. But the thing about it here is that if Ferrel had been committing the act of indecent exposure, it would have required the policeman to have gone and then would have taken him and arrested him on the spot. But instead of doing so, he simply told him, said, well, I'm going to give you a ticket for indecent exposure. And then he had to show up in court on his own. Well, that's disturbing. Because as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, there's no law against peeing in an alley. It may be gross, it may be inappropriate, but whether it breaks a statute. But to turn around and call that indecent exposure is to broaden the scope of the crime to the point where the crime becomes something that you're marked for life over it. Anywhere Ferrel goes, he'll have to put a sign up that says he is a registered offender, and he'll have to register with the court wherever he goes. And if he doesn't, he goes to jail. It's a perpetual sentence for him. Now, in the case of Ferrel, he knows a great deal about legal things. He's very astute with things. So he decided that he wanted to get the magistrate recused from the case. We have two magistrates. He could have asked the other magistrate. He could have asked the magistrate that was assigned to him to give him the other magistrate if he wished. But in this case, his own lawyer, a public defender. Now, don't put much stock in public defenders. The public defender refused to even file the motion. The news today is that even the secretary, who's a notary public, would not sign the motion for recusal. Again, quite a sad indictment of our court system. But worse than that is, when they went before Ferrel filed his motion anyway. And his motion was filed in his very rough, crude way. And he asked for a recusal. And they still wouldn't recuse the magistrate. Now, he had his reasons. I don't know how valid those reasons were, but he had reasons for asking for the recusal of the magistrate. He felt like she was biased against him. So as time went on, Ferrel suddenly got an announcement from his attorney that he was to see a shrink. Ferrel has spent 2 days before a shrink, and the shrink is not finished yet. And because of that, what has happened is he is being required to talk prior to trial. You know, there is a thing in our county, in our land, called Miranda rights. Anything you say can and say, and anything can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to remain silent. Now, I don't consider, and I don't think many people consider, a court-ordered appointment to talk to a shrink prior to trial and without your attorney. I don't think many people would consider that to be appropriate. You see, Ferrel's got this massive log of doctor's reports. You know what's remarkable about it? They're all sealed. We assume that this psychologist's report will be sealed as well. And so, what is the purpose of the psychological evaluation? Is it to see if you're crazy? I'll be honest with you, I don't think Ferrel's a crazy one. I think the officer who gave him a traffic ticket for peeing in an alley is probably the one that ought to see the shrink. How can anyone do that? Now I'm beginning to have doubts about our judge. We've got a new judge. I've assumed that she doesn't know much about the law itself. And she's the one that ordered the psychological evaluation. Well, is this judge looking at it and saying, well, you know, it's okay to give a man a traffic ticket for indecent exposure? You would think of all people that the judge would know what the law is. Now, Ferrel wants the magistrate recused. That's a fair thing. He may not get the magistrate recused, but then as soon as he has a trial, and if he's not acquitted of it, he's headed to circuit court. Then the judge there that made this decision is going to have to recuse herself as well. Now, we hear that the officer is wanting to withdraw the charges. I hope this is true. However, Ferrel deserves his day in court.